Welcome, fellow Stardust. Are you ready for a scare? Today's True Crime and Nails video features the case of Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy, the teenage couple whose relationship was almost entirely digital. They sent thousands of text messages to each other and only had met in person no more than 5 times over the course of about 2 years, despite only living about 50 miles from each other in the suburbs of Massachusetts. When Conrad took his life, detectives discovered that his text messages revealed that Michelle had encouraged him for weeks to follow through on his urges to end his life. I'll talk about the events that led up to Conrad making this tragic decision, and why Michelle had such an impact on him making it. Please be aware that viewer discretion is strongly advised. Before getting into the video, I wanted to give a quick shout out to 3 amazing nail channels. Jump to this timestamp if you'd like to skip this segment. First up is Isms by Josie, a fellow horror fan. Nail art is one of Josie's many hobbies, and her channel features long and short designs of all kinds. Her passion shines through with every video, and watching her feels like I'm chilling with a friend, which I love. Next is Lisa Whitney's channel, Dana August Nails. Lisa is a true nail professional with a personality you can't get enough of. Her voice is soothing, which goes nicely with watching her flawlessly work, making for such a relaxing experience. Her artistry is something I look up to and aspire to achieve. And the last channel is a new friend who found me through Josie, Just Doing Nails. With over 1.5 million views, JDN specializes in reviewing nail products and showcasing beginner nail designs. She does a ton of shorts as well as regular videos. Her creativity blows me away with every upload. Please check out some of my biggest supporters, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. Alright, now let's get into this tragic story of Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy. This case has stirred up a lot of controversy because there is fear that this incident will now set a precedent and impede on the public's First Amendment rights, our freedom of speech. At first, this might seem to make sense, but after further analysis, I would compare what Michelle did to yelling fire in a crowded theater, which wouldn't be covered under the First Amendment. On the other hand, Michelle was 17 and mentally ill. While I do hold her completely responsible for her actions, I do feel a little sympathy for her after digging a little deeper into this story. Conrad lived in Mattapoisett, Massachusetts, and Michelle lived about 50 miles away in Plainville, Massachusetts. They met at her grandparents' and Conrad's great-aunt's country club in Florida. They made feeble attempts after that to meet in person, but ultimately maintained their entire relationship via text messaging. When they met, Michelle was 15 and Conrad was 16. They were 17 and 18 respectively when Conrad ended his life. Michelle was bulimic, which started when she was about 8 or 9 years old, and was put on 10 milligrams of Prozac when she was 14. Prozac is an antidepressant whose side effects include increased risk of suicidal thoughts and tendencies, especially among young people. Soon after starting Prozac, she was found with a homemade noose around her neck. Conrad at the time was taking an antidepressant called Celexa, which also has the same side effect, and he also attempted suicide several times. What's interesting to me about this point is that the judge refused to fund the hiring of a Celexa expert to discuss the risk factors in kids and people under 24. I think the judge should have at least hired his own Celexa expert if he was worried about any sort of funny business. Both kids were on antidepressants that can exacerbate pre-existing issues and even create new ones, like suicidal thoughts. Looking at it from the outside, it seems as though Michelle snapped somewhere along the way and was at a point of no return. At first, for over a year, she would try to talk Conrad out of his suicidal thoughts and told him that suicide wasn't the solution. However, in the last 2 months, something in her brain switched and she instead started to encourage Conrad to take his life. She likely did this for 2 reasons. First, she thought that encouraging Conrad to do something that he'd been talking about with her for 2 years, and even attempted at least 3 times before meeting her, was what would make him happy and set him free from his misery. She expresses to Conrad that she doesn't want him to continue this cycle of planning to carry out the deed just to have it start all over again the next day. The other reason was for attention. Michelle didn't have a lot of friends and didn't really hang out with anyone outside of school. She craved attention and her neediness was oftentimes off-putting to her peers. So she clung on to Conrad as soon as she met him. He asked her if she had a boyfriend and she almost took that as a sort of marriage proposal. She continued to communicate with him even though Conrad wasn't really all that loving with her, and he was always talking about committing suicide. Michelle finally got to a point where she saw two benefits to Conrad killing himself: to free him of his depression and to gain the attention and love of her schoolmates that she so desired. Before he took his life, she made sure with Conrad that she held the title of his girlfriend so that she could then tell everyone that he was her boyfriend. After his death, she even put together a fundraiser for a charity in Conrad's name in her hometown of Plainsville, instead of his hometown of Mattapoisett, which Conrad's family and friends thought was strange. She was adamant about receiving credit for putting everything together and was described as being happy at the event. Also, 2 days before Conrad followed through with his plan, while texting Conrad, Michelle texted her friends telling them that Conrad was missing. Her friends then gave her the love and attention that she craved. This made her even more determined to make Conrad follow through on his promise to kill himself, so that she could get even more of that love and attention. Conrad took his life on July 12, 2014 at around 8 p.m. On June 29, 2014 is when Michelle started to persuade Conrad to carry out the suicide, offering him different methods and scolding him for flip-flopping. Further evidence of Michelle's mental illness is in the words she used when describing her love for him and their relationship before and after his death. She took lines verbatim straight from an episode of Glee. The show featured Rachel, played by Lea Michele, and Finn, played by Corey Monteith, an on-screen couple who were also dating in real life. Corey passed away from an overdose, and in the show, they memorialized him, and Rachel, Leah's character, grieves over him and receives lots of love and attention from her friends. The episode was released about a year before Conrad's death. Michelle would also use Leah's words when she was interviewed in real life about Corey's death. This is something a child or a person who is mentally ill would do, and Michelle was both. The human brain is fully formed and developed at the age of 26, and when antidepressants and other disorders like bulimia are at play, it can make it that much more difficult for a person to grow into a healthy adult. On the other hand, there are times when reading Conrad and Michelle's text exchange, and through her actions with her friends, that she knew what she was doing was completely wrong, even if she thought it was what was best for Conrad. On the 29th, she basically started calling him out on his bluff, saying he's too scared to follow through because he actually wants to live. But you can sense her irritation when she starts to tell him he can't keep living every day the way that he was. On July 7th, Conrad comes up with the idea to use a generator to poison himself with carbon monoxide, and for the next 6 days, she pushes Conrad to do it. Even when he seems hesitant, she reminds him that this is something that he wants to do. He expressed concern over upsetting his family and causing them pain, but she told him that she'll take care of them, and that she would be there for them, and that they'll understand because they know that this is what he really wants. Finally, one early evening after taking his younger sisters for ice cream, Conrad drove his black pickup truck and parked it in an empty parking lot at Kmart in Fairhaven, about 10 minutes from his home. Before turning on the generator, Michelle asked him to make sure that his text messages with her were deleted, and spoke with him on the phone for at least an hour. Weeks later, she would confess to a friend via text messaging that she was on the phone with Conrad while the generator was on. And when he felt the carbon monoxide starting to get to him, he got out of the truck, but she told him to get back in, which he does. Her doctor and lawyer say that since Michelle was known to be a liar by her friends, that this could have also been a lie. But I personally think that she did tell him to get back in. A couple of hours after Conrad killed himself, she continued to text him as if he were still alive. When she was formally informed of his death, she still continued to send text messages to his phone, saying how much she loved him and expressing shock for actually following through. 5 months later, after detectives obtained a search warrant and seized Michelle's phone, Michelle was indicted on February 4th, 2015 as a youthful offender instead of a juvenile. In the judge's eyes, when Conrad stepped out of the truck, he, quote, broke the chain of causation, end quote. and Michelle telling him to get back into the truck was, quote, wanton and reckless behavior, end quote, that ultimately led him to his demise. For that, on June 16, 2017, he convicted Michelle with involuntary manslaughter. On August 3, 2017, she was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, but required to only serve 15 months with 5 years of probation afterward. The judge allowed her to stay home until the Supreme Court reviewed her appeal, which took about 1.5 years. Michelle was released after 11 months for good behavior. Thankfully, the judge also ruled that she would not be able to make any sort of profit from this ordeal, meaning she wouldn't be able to earn a check from any movie, TV show, book deal, or anything having to do with this tragic story. Lifetime has already produced a movie, and Universal Cable Productions is dropping a series on Hulu this year that I plan to review on my channel. There's also a song called Michelle Carter by the band SKYND that I'll leave a link for in the description. It's incredibly chilling. I'll also leave a link where you can find all of the text messages between Conrad and Michelle. Once you start reading, it's kind of hard to stop, so beware. It's easy to flip-flop back and forth when going through their text messages because at times it seems as though they are both just feeding into each other's mental illnesses. He used and threatened her to not tell anyone how he was feeling, and she used him for her own benefit. While I don't think she deserved the maximum possible sentence of 20 years, I do feel like a better court-ordered plan of mental rehabilitation should have been put in place, rather than just a 5-year probation after her prison sentence. This case will likely lead lawmakers to create laws that will take our digital world into account, with a focus on cyberbullying. Let me know what your thoughts are on this case. Do you think Michelle deserved a harsher punishment? Was Conrad going to kill himself despite Michelle's encouragement? Also, when the Hulu show is released this year, would you prefer I do episodic reviews or wait until the series is done and review the whole thing in one video? Let me know down in the comments. Well, thank you for joining me today, fellow Stardust. If you enjoyed this video, hop on the Rainbow Fright Freight Train and hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you'll be notified the next time I upload a new video. I hope I see you next time. Peace.